Hi, everyone. Bill Sheridan with the Maryland Association of CPAs. There's a problem with marketing, and that's that too many marketers think that it's all about selling. There's an even bigger problem with digital marketing, and that's that too many marketers think that it's all about selling on social networks. And they're wrong. They're just dead wrong. And Mitch Joel knows it better than anybody else. Mitch is a digital marketing expert and the author of the best-selling Control Alt Delete: Reboot Your Business, Reboot Your Life. Great book, read it. Here's the deal with marketing as Joel sees it. It's all about solving a problem, really. It's about meeting a need. And digital marketing, it's all about people, building relationships. I mean, the key word in that phrase, social media, is social, right? Mitch gave a keynote address at the recent Digital Now conference in Nashville, and he brought along a great message with him. He said, digital marketing isn't about posting your latest press release on Facebook. It's about building relationships with people and helping them solve problems. I had a chance to talk with Mitch after his keynote, and I asked him to explain what he meant by all this. Here's what he had to say.
Yeah, we still have a sizable portion of our membership who I guess you'd call them very, very late adopters to a lot of this stuff, or are just unconvinced that this kind of evolution is what they signed up for. So I guess for them, why would you say that this evolution to digital communications marketing is important? What does it offer CPAs that the so-called conventional marketing and communications might not?
I think the first really important factor is that they're not late adopters, and that their perception of what happens within the work environment versus the perceptions of reality are grossly exaggerated. What I mean by that is anybody listening to this who's a CPA who could consider themselves a late adopter, they might end this watching this video, and then a spouse might call and say, hey, where are we going for a vacation? And my guess is that they are not going to go down to the local strip mall to the travel agent, nor will they pick up the phone and call a travel agent. They'll probably go onto the internet and look at destinations and look at TripAdvisor, or go to an airline and book a flight. And so we have this massive dichotomy, whether it's in professional services, which I get often, or in pharma, which I deal a lot with as well, where they go, they're late adopters, and they're not late adopters. They might be late adopters in terms of understanding the implications and impact it has on business, but they themselves are typically not laggards. They probably do have a smartphone, a smart device. It's not like they're walking around going, I don't need a cell phone. I mean, to be a really well-respected, probably well-known CPA in this day and age, you must be connected. And so they are. And I think the challenge is just in understanding that what digital offers is the opportunity to really narrow in the focus and to really add value to the people that either matter most or could potentially matter most. And so it's less about why can't we afford like that other CPA firm, that billboard at the airport, and more about who are we really trying to get as a customer, who are currently our customers, and how can we better communicate and connect to them in a more personal way, in a more real way. I've never met a CPA at lunch or dinner or at a bar who didn't say that it's all about relationships and all about building that sort of person-to-person, those real interactions with real human beings. What digital really brought is the ability to have that, to actually communicate in a real digital and in a real human way, in a real interactive way using digital channels. So it's almost like these real sort of protein-based relationships that we have, much more at scale and much more verticalized for efficacy.
That's an excellent point about relationships. What would you say are some of the biggest challenges or landmines that they might face as they look at some of these things, and how might they overcome them?
The only real challenge that I see is dogma. It's just the old way of thinking and the old way of doing things. And that once you sort of have that realization that it's true that even if we were having lunch and I said I need a good CPA, and you said, Mitch, you have to go see person X, that my next move, no matter how much I trust you, is to go onto my smartphone or to go online and actually do a search and see who are they, what is their field of specialty, what have they done in the community, how great are they. So I really do think that it's not sort of a tactical A, B, C, D process. It's more of a dogma, where it's how do we break the dogma of this organization? How do we rise above that and realize that this isn't even really a marketing question. It's much more a question of business. What are we trying to do? How are we trying to reach people? When people hear about us, where's the default place that they go? In my book, I talk about this idea of the digital first posture. Having that embodiment, which is sort of the story we talked about with the travel agent, it's like recognizing and acknowledging that the first place I fundamentally go for validation of a product, a service, an individual is to check them out online. And it's just removing the dogma that says that people don't do this, I don't do this, who does this? The answer is everybody, all of us, and you.
So, what are some of the questions that maybe we should be asking ourselves as we look at some of this stuff?
Well, that's an important one. So more often than not, people will say to me, what should I be doing on Facebook? What should I be doing on YouTube? And I would say it's a terrible question. What is a terrible question? The question is why? Why should you be on Facebook? Why should you blog? Why should you be on Twitter? Why should your website be whatever you need it to be? Why is the question that will tie you into a business strategy. The business strategy will tie you into true metrics. What is the ROI? The real cost benefit, the real value of what it is. And when you have that, you'll start being able to answer questions. So then when you ask a question like, why should we be on YouTube? You can align it directly to that business strategy. And the answer will or should become much clearer for you.
Earlier today is this notion of, I don't get the phrase right, being congruous to the consumer's experience. In other words, that notion that one size doesn't necessarily fit all. We're trying to do the same thing from channel to channel to channel. So tell me a little bit about what you mean by that. How should a CPA's marketing communications efforts kind of reflect that thinking?
The best way to frame it is sort of think about what a Facebook experience is like. So you got a CPA and the firm's on Facebook, and all they're doing is pushing out things like tax season or it's whatever. And I don't really want that in my feed. It's somewhat depressing. But if you can think about what is someone doing on Facebook and what are they really connecting and asking questions about, what is that sort of social graph of their friends like? And then if I were to be a CPA on there and or a business on there, how do I add value to that? How do I add value to them? Maybe experiential, maybe utility, maybe just a content based that'll get them more aligned to what I'm trying to do. And on top of it, at the macro level, the real point of being congruous is that you're actually creating things that fit in the framework of what Facebook does best. The other side of it would be to say like, we just announced 3 new partners, let's put a press release on Facebook. So that's sort of being incongruous. It's not really understanding the metrics by which success can be defined, and at the same time it's also taking a very traditional, like it's just a place to pimp another press release versus what can we do to add value to it.
Another thing you mentioned that really kind of struck home was this notion that we're trying to capture attention of our consumers, build relationships with them in these new spaces, but then again, so is everybody else. Mm-hmm. So, any advice for CPAs on the best way to go about doing that, or to compete well for the attention spans of the potential clients out there?
The first answer is there's no best. There's a lot of bests, and I think the second part of it is that there are no rules in the sense of if you do this, this, and this, it equals success. The story I tell people is that I spent many years in the music industry, and people would ask me, like, how come they're a success and this other band isn't? And again, being in Nashville, it's a very fitting place to have that conversation. But what you really do see is that every rule is an exception. And that's the thing that, again, CPAs might not want to hear, but it is true that if you're looking for the white paper or the case study or this firm did that, so it means it works, you're not going to find that because just because it worked for you, it doesn't mean it's going to work for me or work for my audience. And I think it's bringing that perspective to it that says, to a certain degree, you have to forge your own path, and you have to really build things around what your business goals are and what the real outcomes that you want to have happen are. And I know that sometimes when I say these things, it sounds somewhat ambiguous, like I'm being evasive to the question, and I'm not. The true answer is that each time that my agency goes in and builds real strategy, it is highly customized. In fact, we often talk internally about like, how can we do this in a way where it's not so customized because it's a lot of work and time? And the answer is you can't. You can do a front part that sort of just explains a bit of the landscape maybe, but in general, in terms of true execution, strategic, and then tactical, it's really hard not to get highly, highly personalized. And again, when I think about it at a deeper level, that's what makes it awesome. It's the fact that it's not just like, well, you each get that little square in the newspaper, and how is yours going to be more creative than the other guy? That's not the question. The question is that in a complete open canvas, what will you paint? And looking at it from that perspective, I think it can be intimidating and scary, but at the same time, hyper creative as well.
And in a way, it's it's really not anything new. It's just a new way of doing what we've always done, which is building those relationships and
Yeah.
those really making those deep connections.
I would say the only really new thing is the fact that there is no individual that is guarding the relationship between you and the audience. That's the only new thing. Before that, really, if you wanted to communicate, you'd have to, advertise in the local newspaper, go on radio, you'd have to go on TV, maybe, like I said, billboard at the airport or whatever it might be. Now you don't need those gatekeepers, as Seth Godin would call them, to connect to an audience. And that's the real power of that idea of the direct relationship that I talk a lot about. It's your ability to go out every single day and nurture and build a direct relationship without an intermediary, which is traditionally something we did have. So I would say that's the newest component, the fact that you don't need the intermediary to access an audience.
So let's say we've got a member out there who gets the importance of this stuff, is excited to try it, but hasn't really dipped his or her toes into the waters yet. Any advice for where to begin, for logical first steps?
Yeah, I mean, my theory is you should always build the real strategy first, and I think a digital marketing strategy would take you 90% of the way there in terms of understanding what it is you're doing, why you're doing it, what the timeline and budget would look like. And this sort of visualization that I tell people is, what is the overall business strategy? Allow that agency or partner to find for you products and services, digitally obviously, because that's what we're talking about, that can help solve that. How does it solve it? Well, we're going to build a framework around each component of it and look for metrics of success. The analytics we're going to use to benchmark against it, how we're going to optimize it should it fail, how we're going to optimize it should it be successful. And then we're going to build a communication layer under it. The communication layer is going to have your paid advertising, your earned, which is social and connecting people, and your own, which is our platforms, our websites, our areas. And then from that, you'll at least have a picture with, again, a timeline, deliverables, and budget against it that helps you move forward. I'm not going to sit here and tell you it's cheap or it doesn't take a lot of time. It's a paradigm shift in how one operates their business, but I really do believe it moves you from, or elevates you from, a world of let's advertise and communicate, which has really been the crux of what we've done in businesses, in particular CPAs, to a grander scheme of let's actually market, product, price, promotion, place, and build platforms for success underneath it.
That's fascinating. Any new skills that we need going forward? What kind of new skill sets do we need to take keen advantage of all this stuff?
I mean, I think, again, it's sort of moving above or rising above an advertising mindset. Well, the easiest thing to do is just to put a lot of messages in the market. I think that's one. I think there is a lot to be said around usability and functionality. I mean, this idea of user experience, the ability to understand what the real friction points are and how do we remove friction. If you look at anything you like right now, whether it's Facebook, Instagram, Apple products, I mean, you go on and on, all of them are iterations of something that already existed with a layer of removal of friction. I look at the iPhone versus a traditional smartphone, just removes a whole bunch of friction. Think about the laptop to even the tablet, the iPad. There's a whole bunch of friction, right? The screen opening up, plugging it in, opening it up, waiting for it to boot, commands, all this stuff to just like touch and go. So you're always looking for, I guess, a center of excellence around how do we remove more and more friction from the consumers. And then I just think it's around how do you sort of block and tackle with IT and legal to be able to really communicate candidly, honestly, and openly, while obviously maintaining your integrity and sticking to your all the rules and guidelines and things you have to follow in your organization, but that ultimately really does allow you to communicate in a more human and connected way. So there's skills that we sort of have, and there's sort of more subtle plays off of what we do. In general, it just involves people coming to work with a more open mind and being willing to communicate and have those conversations.
Is there any way, if you could boil it down to one key message that you think CPAs should take away from all this, what would it be?
Well, I think it's just the understanding that when you live in a world that is this connected and this untethered, meaning it's sort of connected and everywhere, that the paradigm of what we call connections changes. And that my ability to sort of sit here with you and have you tell me, hey, did you read that book? And for me to buy the book and have it physically on me in that instance changes the way in which we understand and connect to products and services. And so the way we look at the extension of what a sales funnel looks like or a conversion funnel, it does completely change. And because of that, we have to really think differently about how we operate our business. And that's just the type of stuff that I think is really good. I think it's good for us to reimagine and revisit it now, because now is the opportunity where it's happening.